Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe and Mary Kay Cabot with you. A Hey, Mary Kay edition of the podcast, back from the Combine in Indianapolis. Spent a lot of time out there, Mary Kay. More time than we usually spend staying for the offensive linemen, of course, which feels appropriate today because the Browns are going to make a trade for an offensive lineman. So these questions are from our Football Insider subscribers, and that leads right into this question from Mark Scott in Minerva, Ohio. The Browns going to acquire Tytus Howard for a 5th-round pick. They're also going to give him a 3-year, $63 million per year, or not per year. That would be a lot. 3-year, $63 million extension. So Mark Scott, Minerva, Ohio says, "Hey, Mary Kay, does the trade for Tytus Howard influence how the first 2 picks of the draft will be used, or was this a deal to add depth?"
Well, I think it actually probably does influence the draft a little bit, even though Andrew always says they go into the draft acting like they don't have anything else and they're an expansion team. I still think it frees you up to maybe take 1 tackle and 1 receiver or something like that in the first round of the draft. Now, once again, we must remember Andrew doesn't operate like that. He doesn't draft for need, and he shouldn't draft for need. That's the quickest way to lose your job, is to go for a player that is not as good as the one you could have picked. So you have got to take the best available player. But this year is a year in which the best available players match up with the Browns' needs. They need those offensive tackles. They need those wide receivers. And it's a nice, rich class in both of those areas. So I think you could end up with one of these guys that we talked to on Saturday. We talked to most of the really good offensive tackles on Saturday, got a feel for them, got to see how they passed the eyeball test, got a feel for some of their personalities a little bit. I'm glad we did it. There is a photo circulating on Twitter right now that shows that there was hardly anybody left just 15 minutes before all the offensive linemen talked on Saturday at the Combine. But there we were, the Cleveland media.
Although I will say I did not make it into that photo. I had not arrived yet. So I was one of the late arrivers. I was there before they started talking. And by the way, there were more people there than that photo showed. Like, some of those scrums got pretty big. So I think that there were people that kind of were late arriving like I was. But
well, that's because it was, of course, pretty early morning. It was 10 a.m. on a Saturday at the Combine. And that's early considering that people are usually out until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. But we were there in full force, Cleveland media contingent. And of course we had to be, because the Browns need so many offensive linemen and we needed to get to know these guys. So even though it would probably have been easier for us to just say, hey, let's go home on Friday, we stuck it out. We did our jobs, and I'm proud of us for being in that picture. And again, Dan, you showed up probably 2 seconds after that. You were there for that whole Saturday scrum with the offensive linemen, mostly the tackles, and I'm glad we stuck around for that.
yeah, it was good because that's one of those positions where it's nice to be able to actually get eyes on people and actually see them. And, of course, a lot of discourse around that photo. It's one of those things that takes off on social media. We're fortunate that we do get to stay there till Saturday. Not everyone has that. I mean, there's some people that can only stay there for their coach and GM to talk, and then they got to get out of there. So, we're fortunate that we're able to get those expense reports through that can keep us there until Saturday. But we did get to see these guys, and that was important. And now when you look at this Tytus Howard acquisition, I think it comes down to, it just reminded me, Mary Kay, of the Jack Conklin signing. And in a lot of ways, I view this as a free agent signing, even though it's a trade. The fact that they're extending him, it's basically you're basically giving him 3 years, $63 million to come play for the Cleveland Browns. It's just getting ahead of him actually hitting free agency. This feels a little bit like when they went out and signed Jack Conklin, and then they ended up drafting Jed Wills at number 10 overall. And I could see a similar situation where they trade for Tytus Howard, extend him, they view him as one of their 2 starting tackles, and then they either draft someone at number 6 or trade back and draft him at 9 or 10, wherever, or even at 24. I don't think this necessarily changes anything. It just gives them a little wiggle room, kind of everywhere else.
It really does. It really does. It sort of takes the pressure off. We know that they have to restock that offensive line almost completely. And we know that Andrew Berry has admired what the Chicago Bears did last offseason, where they took a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit of draft, a little bit of free agency, a little bit of trade. And that's what the Browns are going to do. They might make another trade. Who knows? I mean, Andrew loves to wheel and deal at this time of year. Maybe he's got an offensive lineman that he will sign in free agency. If not in the first wave, then maybe come back in the second wave and grab someone there. And I still think that all of those tackles are in play at number 6, or if they trade back. And I think in a perfect world, they would love to trade back a little bit. I think there are probably 6, 7, 8 guys that people would give something valuable up to come up and get. So I think they're in a nice spot there at number 6, where somebody is going to say, hey, why don't we trade up for a Caleb Downs, or why don't we trade up for an Arvell Reese, or even a Sonny Styles, or a Ty Simpson, or whatever. Why don't we go ahead and do that and see if we can get somebody to take this deal from us. And I think the Browns would be more than happy to do that. I think they really, really like a number of these offensive tackles and would probably be happy with the number of them. And then short of that, there probably are some receivers that they would love to have in the first round. And once again, Andrew likes to shock and surprise a little bit during the draft. When you think he's going to zig, sometimes he zags. Sometimes he goes defense when you think he's going to go offense. So it's unpredictable, and I think that this just does free them up a little bit to do whatever they want to do in the first round.
I was also thinking about this too. When you look at some of these top guys, like Spencer Fano, played right tackle his last couple years at Utah. Francis Maui-Noah played right tackle at Miami. So if you draft one of those guys and you have Tytus Howard in the building, maybe you move Titus Howard to the left side and you let one of those guys come into the league at least and start off at right tackle. I just don't think it puts you in a position where you have to draft a Spencer Fano and say, okay, now you've got to make this transition as a rookie to the left side. Same with the Maui-Noah. Now they could take a, Caden Proctor or Caleb Lomu, so, Monroe Freeling, one of these guys who have played left tackle. And maybe the plan is just that simple. The other thing I think this does is you're bringing in a guy who, I mean, let's say they draft a tackle, and then let's say DeJuan Jones comes back and is in awesome shape and competes and shows that he's worthy to maybe be a starter again. It would be expensive, but you can kick Howard in at guard if you wanted to, because he's played guard before. And now you're paying $21 million a year for a guard. That's a lot of money. It's not the highest paid, but it's up there. But it does give you that kind of flexibility. Like, this is a guy that could play the left. He could play the right. If you wanted to kick him into guard, you could do that. It just gives you a lot of options. I think, obviously, if you're giving him 3 years, $63 million, he's going to be one of your 5 starters and most likely one of your starters at tackle. But there is at least you have some options with him if things play out a certain way in camp and as you set up these competitions.
Right. There is definitely position flexibility with Howard. So you can do a lot of different things with him. The thing that he hasn't really done is play left tackle. So he hasn't done that. He has played primarily right tackle, and then he's played left guard. And I think he's probably played some right guard to a little bit of right guard, but he hasn't played left tackle. So you still, for the most part, are probably going to be finding yourself more of a true left tackle. And there are some guys coming out that fit that mold, Caden Proctor being one of them. And you can probably get your hands on him at number 6, or at least it seems like maybe you can. So that's something to keep in mind. Unless you really do 100% believe that DeJuan Jones is going to come back healthy and you can plug him in there and that he's going to stay healthy and that he's going to be okay over there. So not exactly sure what they're thinking in that regard, but who knows? I mean, we might see another trade. We might see a free agent signing that helps inform what their actual plans are there. And of course, we're still waiting to figure out what's going to happen with Joel Bitonio at left guard. Still don't know exactly what's happening there. Maybe he wants to get the lay of the land a little bit and see what's going to be happening at um, other spots on the offensive line or at quarterback. So we probably will be hearing something soon, but as of right now, we just don't have a definitive word on that.
Yeah, and of course that sort of determines we don't know what they're going to do even at center. For example, like do they want to ride with Luke Whippler at center, or do they want to bring back Ethan Posick, who obviously is coming off that ruptured Achilles? There are some. How does Tevin Jenkins fit into all of this? Do they want? Do they like what they saw at the end of last year and want to bring him back? There's a lot of questions internally that we don't have answers to yet, but this sends a pretty clear signal. This is the start, and we always talk about what's the first move a team makes. It's not always like the biggest thing, but I do think it matters that the first move Andrew Berry made was let's agree to a trade. Let's not mess around in free agency. Let's not leave any of this to chance. Let's go get the guy that we wanted. And like I said, I do kind of view this as if he were a free agent offering him 3 years, $63 million and bringing him in. And in the end, all it cost you was a 5th-round pick. So I think this is a pretty good start for this team.
Right. And they filled a hole. And that's what you want to do in trades and free agency. Again, in the draft, you want to build your roster with the strongest and best players that you can possibly find. In trades and free agency, you are plugging holes. And there are plenty of holes all across the offensive line, as we know. And now one of those positions is taken care of. I will say, however, that his run blocking is not his strong suit. His pass blocking is his strong suit. So you might have to give him a little bit of help in obvious running situations. You might have to jumbo it up a little bit. There are certain things that you might have to do there to make sure that you're getting what you need. But he is definitely an excellent pass blocker. He was tied for 18th in the NFL in pass blocking. And in last year, in all of his snaps from last year, he only surrendered one quarterback hit and no sacks. I mean, that's remarkable. That's really remarkable. I think I have that right. How many snaps was that? I wrote this earlier. So in 609 pass block snaps, he gave up 0 sacks and 1 QB hit. That's pretty amazing. He played 550 snaps at right tackle last year and 334 snaps at left guard last year. So he's pretty darn amazing in the pass blocking realm. And he ranked only 85th in run blocking with a 50.7 grade. And that is subpar. That's not what you want for your run blocking. But again, there are ways to get around that a little bit. They got what they needed over there. It's not easy to find an accomplished starting right tackle or left tackle anywhere. And they got one. And they should be pretty happy about this.
Okay, so let's move on. Some leftover stuff from the combine and some of what we heard last year. So this comes from Tom in Middlebury, Connecticut. Hey, Mary Kay, what do you think of the open competition plan at quarterback?
Well, I think it might almost be a question of semantics because in a perfect world, Todd Monken would like to know who his QB1 is by the time he hits training camp at the end of July. So the open competition part of it is going to ensue when the offseason program begins and when OTAs are underway and when minicamp is going on. I don't know if it's going to be a full-on open competition in training camp. I think it would behoove them to avoid that. I think that you need to hit the ground running in camp and you need to be as ready as you can possibly be to let the starters get as many reps as they possibly can in a brand new scheme, because it's never easy to get all these players working together in a fast, rapid fashion in a brand new scheme. So I think you want to give as many reps as you can to QB1, and hopefully for him and for them, they will have that sorted out by the time they get to camp. And if they don't 100% sure know by July 29th who the QB1 is, then they need to know very soon after that. They cannot go deep, deep, deep into camp not knowing who their quarterback is. It's too detrimental to everybody on that offense. There's not enough time to catch up. They have to know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think you can. I think at most maybe you can commit 2 weeks of camp to this thing. Like if it gets if it even gets that far, because what do we keep talking about? They have to remake this offensive line. They're going to bring in young playmakers, right? Maybe young linemen, maybe young receivers. They need to really work to get all these guys on the same page with the quarterback, with the play caller, with the OC, all of that stuff. And you just don't do that if you're having this open competition and splitting reps and taking reps away from guys and have a guy way over on some field working by himself, however they decide to do it. I think you need to know who you have, and let these guys all work together and get used to each other, because you just look, they don't have to go win the Super Bowl this year, but you can't. I mean, Jimmy Haslam stood up there and said 8 wins in 2 years isn't good enough. Like, they have to at least be competitive, and they have to be ready to go week one. And if you waste time on a QB competition, and it sounded like, Todd Monken didn't just come out and say it, but it sure sounded like he didn't really want to waste a ton of time on a quarterback competition in training camp. Like, it just slows everything down with everything else going on this offense.
Yeah, it really does. But when I look at what is kind of going on right now on this Cleveland Browns offense for 2026, it almost seems to me that this is not the year to take this prized pig to the fair on offense. I just don't know if they can say this is going to be the year. And the reason why I say that is because they don't know who their quarterback is going to be yet. They might start this season with either Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and they just have to see how that goes. They just have to see, do we have our quarterback this year, or are we looking at the 2027 draft? And then you look at the offensive line. Sure, you can patch some holes and kind of pull it all together, but it's going to take that offensive line probably at least part of this year to be a well-oiled machine, to be working together like the five fingers on a hand, or all those things that you say about offensive linemen. So I just don't know if this is the year that you can expect great, wonderful, explosive, magical things out of this offense. Of course, I think it comes down to the quarterback, who the quarterback is. But there are a lot of things that need to happen on this offense for it to get where it needs to go.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that, I was thinking about, like, if this defense is, let's say, even 75% of what it was last year. And I think it'll be better than that. But let's just say if for some reason they take a step back, Mike Rutenberg's never called a defense, all that stuff, or they start off a little slow or something like that. If they're even like just 75% of what they were last year, maybe just a borderline top 10 defense. And again, I think they will be better than that. You don't need to score 30 points a game to win. And I think we saw last year that there were just games where, man, if you could have scored 24 points, if you could have scored 21 points, you could have won this game. And I do think that if they can just figure it out enough on offense, they can be one of those teams that lands in that, 7, 8, 9, depending on how the ball bounces, maybe even get that. We see it every year just because of the way the NFL is. Like, you can stumble your way into 7 or 8 wins, and I think people would feel good about that. And again, I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. I've said this before. I still don't know. I still feel like there's something out there that we haven't thought of, or some move they're going to make at that position that we haven't thought of yet. It's just hard for me to believe that Todd Monken's looking at this and saying, yeah, I'm good putting my first chance at 60 years old in the hands of Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. Maybe he'll have to. But I think this offense can at least be good enough to win some football games, and at least be better than they were a year ago.
Yeah, I think so. And you know that I've been saying this for some weeks now, probably at least 3 weeks now. I've been trying to say that I don't really think that they are going to be the team that ends up with Malik Willis, right? I mean, I think I've been pretty vocal about that. I think I've said it many, many times on the podcast. I've said it on videos. I've said it in short videos, that I do think that there probably will be another team that ends up with Malik Willis. And I've mostly said the Miami Dolphins, but I think the Cardinals are another team that could be well in play for that as well. And part of that is going to be because the price tag could climb to $30 million realistically, because it's not a good year for quarterbacks. There just aren't a lot of available quarterbacks this year. So the price is going to go up on him. There will be suitors. Uh, and then the other thing is that he is represented once again by Deshaun Watson's agent, David Mulugeta. Not sure that he wants to put those two guys against each other. So I've been saying for a long time, I just don't know if he's a viable option. But we can also never say never, because if a guy's market doesn't turn out to be what he thinks it's going to be, or the price doesn't get to where they want it to go, then you never know. You never know. It's got to be right player at right price. And if somehow he ends up being that, then they would be in the mix. But right now, it sort of still seems to me like somebody else is going to be willing to pay him more than the Cleveland Browns are going to be able to pay him next year, in part because of what's going on with Deshaun Watson's contract. $80 million right now, cap charge. That will be restructured at some point, and that number will come down significantly. But nevertheless, it's still going to be a big number, and too big to probably add a $30 million quarterback, even though there's probably ways to structure that contract so that he ends up with a $1.25 million contract in his first year. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I came away from the combine, and I'm sure somebody probably asked this question, so maybe I should just shut up and let somebody ask the question. Did anybody ask a question about how we came away from the combine feeling about the quarterback situation?
Some people asked about, let me see if there was a specific question, but if not, we'll just say there was.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? We'll just say there was. You know what? Dan Labbe
From
from
Stowe?
Stowe, Ohio. Hey, Mary Kay, how do you feel about the quarterback situation after the combine? Yeah, and
Great.
my dog is weighing in upstairs too.
Better your dog than my cat right now. So great question, Dan from Stowe. And I came away from the NFL Combine thinking that the Browns really are going to try to see if they can get something out of Deshaun Watson or Deshaun and Shedeur Sanders.
This is my fault because I said that last week. I said Deshaun instead of Shedeur when we were talking about Deshaun Watson and Shedeur. So this is my fault. I planted that in your head, and now you're not
You
going to be able to
did.
get rid of it.
So I do think at this moment in time that it's probably going to come down to those two guys. And they're going to try to decide what they can do with those two guys and then look to the 2027 draft if they need to, and look at that very rich 2027 class when they should have Arch Manning and Dante Moore and Lenora Sellers and all these other guys. So that's how I feel today. Now, that could change. That could change. We hear all kinds of other things. We see all kinds of other things. It's the season of rumors. It's silly season. It's lying season. People have to remember that teams, it behooves them to kind of fudge things a little bit and make sure that people don't really know what they're up to. And sometimes they even plant stories and put things out there on purpose to make sure that it's a misdirection play and that you don't know what they're doing and don't know where they're going with a certain thing. But right now, in this moment, I still sort of feel like it's going to be those two guys battling it out for this year, and they'll put their resources elsewhere on that offense and then see how it goes and come back next year with a quarterback if they need to.
Does that preclude drafting someone in your mind? So like, and I don't mean like drafting some guy on like day 3, but drafting like, I mean, Ty Simpson, I think his stock is going to rise. I don't, to the point where maybe you might not be able to get him at 24, but drafting Ty Simpson at, let's say 24, or drafting Garrett Nussmeier in the 2nd or 3rd round, or draft, somebody, any other, throw any other name in there, Carson Beck, whatever. Drafting someone on day 2 of the draft. Does that, I guess when you say Deshaun versus Shedeur, does that preclude taking a quarterback on the first 2 days of the draft?
No, I don't think it does. I really don't necessarily think that it does. And here's why that I say that, and it's going to sound like I'm kind of all over the road or talking out of both sides of my mouth with this, but I keep coming back to this. Todd Monken has not really had a whole lot of time to evaluate not only his own quarterbacks that he has on his roster, or the quarterbacks in the draft, or the quarterbacks in free agency, because his number one priority was to build the absolute best coaching staff that he could possibly assemble. And we are going to be talking to those guys on Wednesday in Berea. So that's kind of an exciting thing to meet those guys for the first time in that press conference setting. But I don't know that Todd has really been able to dig into the nitty gritty of these guys and examine everything that he needs to about all of these quarterbacks. And maybe by the time they get to the draft, he will have had time to do that. And maybe things change. Maybe things change by that. Maybe his opinion changes. I think right now, coming out of the combine, I feel like it's still those two guys, but it's a fluid situation. First, you have to see what's going to happen with any veteran quarterbacks that start flying around out there. Then you got to dig in and really watch the film on your own guys and on the draft eligible guys and see if you feel like you can move forward with Deshaun and Shedeur or if you need something else. And I don't know that he 100% knows the answer to that yet. And it's not just going to be him, of course. He is going to have a say in the matter. He's going to have a say in the matter, but it needs to be a big say. It needs to be, he has to be really excited to coach whoever is going to be playing quarterback for him next year. He's got to be all in on that guy as best he possibly can be. And I don't think he knows enough yet. So how he feels right now, and even how Andrew Berry feels right now, might be different than how they feel on April 10th, April 15th, April 20th. There's a process. There is a process. And they still have to do a lot of work on some of these guys. And maybe there is another quarterback that isn't even Ty Simpson that they're going to look at and think, maybe he's somebody that we can do something. What about Talon Green? I mean, he's an intriguing prospect, right? Did you watch him yesterday in the combine that he had?
I saw, yeah, I was seeing some of the clips. I wasn't sitting there watching it, but yeah, I saw some of the clips and stuff.
He's very athletic, very, very athletic, very fast. And, what if you dig into a guy like that and think, this is a great developmental project and we see an upside here that we're really super excited about. I mean, I don't know, but anything can happen at this point. I just think that at this moment in time, if training camp started tomorrow, that they would march forward with Deshaun and Shedeur.
And like, so this is me. Like, if I were advising Todd Monken on this situation, and Todd Monken isn't going to ask me for advice, but I think you're playing with fire if you go into this season banking on those two guys. Because like Deshaun is, by the time we get to September, it'll be almost 2 years since he played a football game. Like, we've all been down that road before. And Shedeur showed flashes. I think there were moments where it was like, oh, that was interesting. But also there were a lot of moments where it was like, okay, I see why he went in the 5th round. So I think you're playing with fire, because it's easy to say today, well, we can do this and see what happens in 2027. But a lot can change between now and January, whatever, 2027. So I just, this is the thing that keeps giving me pause, is this idea of Todd Monken understanding he's 60 years old. He's been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. He's finally got it. Is he absolutely certain that he's going to want to tie his future? And I know it's just the immediate future, but again, if this team doesn't win, maybe you're looking at a situation where the GM is gone, and then who knows what happens to the head coach. So I just think you've got to be careful thinking too much about 2027, if that's the kind of the route they go.
And the other thing to consider, so much can still happen, again, between now and the draft. What if Shedeur and his camp want some kind of assurances
Right.
that he is going to be the guy, right? I mean, like, this is a very strong group of people that he has around him, including his father. I mean, they might want to know, hey, where is this all going? So we don't know where this is all going yet. And nobody knows exactly where this is all going yet. And I think it's going to be very intriguing to watch it. I mean, I even see things where people are like, oh, I think they're going to trade for Anthony Richardson. I mean, I have no idea if they would even think about doing something like that. Right now, I don't see that happening and thinking that he would come in and do better than either Deshaun or Shedeur. But, we don't know exactly what's happening. We did not know in 2022 that the Browns were actually going to end up with Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, that seemed like a total long shot. So many things had to happen for that to take place and come to fruition, including a fully guaranteed $230 million contract. So you never really know. That's another thing. What if Jimmy Haslam steps in and says, hey, let's go get Malik Willis and let's go pay him $30 million a year, right? I mean, there are other parties involved besides the primary decision makers, right? I mean, we think of Andrew Berry and then we think of Todd Monken having a say in things, but there are other people that do get involved and things sometimes start to take on a little bit of a life of their own.
Well, and the 2022 offseason is interesting, not just because of the way that week played out, but I've referenced this before on the pod. We did a whole series, the Baker Mayfield Matrix, where we went through every day was like a new option. What should the Browns do at quarterback? And it felt all offseason it felt like coming out of that season, like maybe Baker wasn't going to be the perfect solution, but it felt like, okay, I don't know if there's anything better out there. You're talking about, I don't know. There just weren't guys out there that made you say, yeah, that's a better solution. That's a better solution. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Browns get in on the Deshaun sweepstakes and he ends up choosing Cleveland. So that's like right now on March 2nd, it might feel a little bit like, yeah, they might just have to do the Deshaun Shedeur thing because they don't have other options. But things can change in an instant. And we saw that in 2022 when it kind of felt like, they just might have to go another year with Baker Mayfield and then figure it out after that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is young in the season of acquisition. It's only just getting underway. And things are going to get really interesting, of course, starting on Monday when the negotiating period opens. That's where we're going to find out where some of these quarterbacks land. Kyler Murray's going to be on the move. Geno Smith is going to be on the move. Kirk Cousins is going to be on the move. I don't see them doing a Kirk Cousins necessarily Geno Smith kind of thing. I don't think that they would do that. I think if they acquire a quarterback, it will be somebody that they see has a longer term future here or can be developed into something. I don't think they're going to go with an older quarterback and bring somebody like that in. But we're going to start to see some movement starting on Monday, or maybe even before that, if you get some trades like the Browns made their trade today. So things are heating up. The league year is about to open. It's about to get very interesting. And remember, the day that we had the Jimmy Haslam press conference, when Kevin Stefanski was fired, he said the next 120 days are crucial, and they really are. And we're in the thick of those days right now, and it's go time starting Monday.
Okay, there we go. A Hey Mary Kay edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Those questions from our Football Insider subscribers. That's cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. Find us on YouTube as well, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. And any social you've got, go search for Orange and Brown Talk and give us a follow over there. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.